Hello everyone, welcome back to another Project Gladiator weather forecast. Today I'll be covering the weather for December 17th of 2023. And currently we have a slight risk for the coastal regions of South Carolina into North Carolina. Threats for today do include a 5% tornado threat for that slight risk area, as well as a 15% wind threat for that slight risk area, but we don't really have all that much of a hail threat for today. For tomorrow, we are expected to see a marginal threat for the New Jersey region into the New York City region, as well as Connecticut and Rhode Island. Threats for tomorrow do include just a 5% wind threat. And then for a day 3 outlook, no thunderstorms or any general thunderstorms are currently forecasted. And then for day 4 to day 8 outlook, currently nothing is forecasted. Taking a look at our WPC outlook, starting off the excessive rainfall forecast. For today, we do have a fairly large slight risk extending all the way from Georgia into the New York City region and western Massachusetts and western Connecticut. This is due to that low pressure system that is going to be riding up the eastern coast. We are seeing the first nor'easter of the year, or the winter season, and that is going to be bringing a ton of rainfall to the eastern half of the United States. For tomorrow, we are expected to see a slight risk for northern Massachusetts or central Massachusetts into parts of Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, as well as a marginal threat for flash flooding for northern California into southern Oregon. And then for day 3 outlook, we do have a fairly large marginal threat for a very good portion of California, especially along the coast in Northern California. Then we can also take a look at our winter weather outlooks. For today, we currently don't have anything forecasted as far as heavy snow. We may be able to see a little bit of heavy snow up in Canada, just south of the Hudson Bay. And then for tomorrow, we are expected to see quite a bit of heavy snow as we see a little bit of a trough and a cold front come out of the north, being aided by the westerly flow on the western side of the low pressure system, where we could see quite a bit of heavy snow, potentially lake effect across the upper peninsula of Michigan. And as well as the main peninsula of Michigan, northern Indiana, across the Appalachian Mountains, as well as south of Lake Erie. And then we could also possibly see a little bit of heavy snow for some of the more mountainous regions for eastern California. Then for day 3 outlook, we are expected to see the majority of the snow clear out across the eastern half of the United States, but we could see a little bit of heavy snow for some portions of the upper parts of California, as well as some of the Northwest. Taking a look at our weather model, starting off with our 500 millibars and our frontal systems. As of right now, we do have that main primary trough that is continuing to ride up along the eastern half of the United States, as well as a surface low that's just a little bit down to the south, and that is expected to ride up along the more coastal regions, a little bit more towards the east of the main 500 millibar low. And this is expected to drag along a cold front. And by the time this cold front does get into the region of concern, that it is going to start developing a line of broken line of storms along that cold front. And again, you can see with this low pressure system, you can see quite strong mid-level flow, upwards of 50 to 60 miles per hour, and you can see very apparent veering of the winds. So we are definitely expected to see quite a bit of directional shear with this, to support the possibility of tornadoes across this region. Taking a look at our composite reflectivity, I'm going to be going over the when and where you should be able to see our severe thunderstorms. So the time we are expected to see that broken line of severe thunderstorms begin to develop in the area of concern is going to begin to develop around the Charleston region of South Carolina around 2 to 3 p.m. And then we could also maybe see some more marginal severe thunderstorms along a stationary front that is going to become a warm front in the next couple of hours and move more inland. We could see the possibility of some more marginal and severe thunderstorms along that secondary warm front ahead of the first warm front. And then the cold front is expected to move into the Georgetown and Myrtle Beach area around 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. And then that is going to move into southern North Carolina around 8 p.m. Into 10 p.m. And then it's going to move into the sound of North Carolina, between the mainland and the line of islands out further out to sea. That is going to move into that sound area around 10 p.m. And move into the Kitty Hawk region around 1 a.m. tonight. And then we can also take a look at the progression of this system by itself. You can see as it begins to develop in southern Charleston, or just to the south of Charleston, or in the southern regions of that area of concern, you can see that we do have that low pressure system that is going to circle back around where the cold front actually is, and that's going to be the start of the occlusion process, and that is going to introduce a little bit of convective inhibition behind that I will take a look at, and that is going to lead to overall a lower end threat for severe thunderstorms as it moves into North Carolina. So I think the best possibility for severe thunderstorms is probably going to be around the South Carolina region into southern North Carolina. Probably not going to be into the more northern regions of that slight risk area or the marginal threat area, because by the time that low pressure system does circle back around the cold front, that is going to start the occlusion process, and the storms are expected to start dying down. And then we can also take a look at the flash flooding risk that we have across the eastern half of the United States. Uh, because of how much rainfall and how heavy it is and how long lasting it is expected to be with the system as a whole, you can see for North Carolina and South Carolina, we could possibly see a total of 4 to 5 inches of rainfall just today, as well as the general average for the entire slight risk region for flash flooding is probably going to be anywhere from 2 to 3 inches. So we are expected to see a ton of rainfall fall just today. So again, definitely make sure you're watching out for any flash flooding if you know you live in any low-lying areas or anywhere that that rainwater typically accumulates, because you're going to be seeing a ton of rainfall today. Taking a look at our wind gust models, we're going to be focusing on the damaging wind threat for the coastal regions of North Carolina and South Carolina. You can see that we do have quite a bit of damaging winds blowing in from the Atlantic Ocean, as well as quite a bit of damaging winds more inland as well. More inland, we could see damaging wind gusts across Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina, upwards of 40 to possibly even 50 miles per hour. And then you see out in the Atlantic Ocean, we are seeing wind gusts upwards of 68 to even above 70 miles per hour. That is just as high as the models go. It will not go any higher than 68.9. But you can see that is all going to be blowing in from the Atlantic Ocean. That's also going to be bringing a ton of water with it. So we could see the possibility of some coastal flooding along the coast. And again, that is going to be blowing in from the Atlantic Ocean and leading to wind gusts upwards of 50 miles per hour in the mid 50s, possibly getting close to 60 miles per hour, but it is probably going to stay mostly around 50 miles per hour. So if you do live in any of the areas that could potentially be impacted by these damaging wind gusts, definitely make sure you are securing any objects that you don't want to lose, as it is going to be fairly windy across this region, and that's going to continue to ride up along the coast. So if you know that you may be impacted by this system, again, definitely make sure you're strapping down any objects you don't want to lose outside. Taking a look at our dew points, you can see that we are expected to have some fairly good moisture ashore. We are expected to see a little bit more moisture, a little bit more better moisture out into the Atlantic Ocean because it is the ocean. But we are expected to see a lot of moisture being pulled ashore by that surface low pressure system. We are expected to see some fairly good moisture ashore, with dew points that are going to be getting into the low into the upper and mid 60s. And you can also see the apparent frontal systems here with the cold front and the warm front. Just something to point out, but we are expected to see some fairly good moisture ashore. But we will have to look at our temperatures for the definitive estimation on what our K values are expected to be. Then we can also take a look at our temperatures as far as the coastal regions of South Carolina and North Carolina, and how that's going to affect our instability. We are expected to see some fairly warm, but not really the best moisture across North Carolina and South Carolina. It's going to be fairly warm, but it's also going to be chilly if you have a strong breeze. So temperatures that are going to be getting into the mid 60s, possibly getting close to those upper 60s, aren't really going to be the best for instability, and we're probably going to see some fairly overall low end instability. But there are going to be multiple factors that are going to influence our instability outside of just our temperatures, and we will look at those. And then we can also take a look at some of our more widespread temperatures. We are expected to see some colder temperatures due to that cold front that is progressing across the eastern half of the United States, further to the west of that low pressure system that is going to merge with that nor'easter in the next couple of hours. But we are seeing some fairly cold impacts because of it. We are seeing temperatures that are going to be getting into the 40s and the 30s. Across the Ohio River Valley, with temperatures that are going to be getting into the 30s at night and the 40s in Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, possibly into Georgia, and then in the northern half of the United States here in the northern Midwest, we are expected to see temperatures that are going to be getting well below freezing tonight for parts of Minnesota or Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Wyoming, Colorado, Wisconsin, and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and that should further progress down to the south as that cold front progresses. That we are expected to see a little bit of another cold blast out of the north, and this cold front that is currently indicated on our surface analysis is going to be the one to do it. And then we are expected to see some fairly warm temperatures in the southern central plains tonight, as we are seeing a little bit of a warm front pass through that region. We are seeing temperatures that are going to be getting into the mid and upper 60s, possibly getting into the 70s across western Texas, and those temperatures could also be getting into Oklahoma, parts of western Kansas, eastern Colorado, and even into Nebraska and South Dakota. So it is expected to be quite warm across the southern central plains. Hopping over to pivotal weather just for a moment, we're going to be taking a look at our lapse rates and how that's going to affect our instability. We are expected to see some fairly overall low end lapse rates. It's not going to be nothing. We are expected to see a little bit of some steep lapse rates in the region of concern, so that should help with the instability a little bit. Taking a look at our temperature advection, we are expected to see quite a bit of warm air advection out of the southeast out of the Atlantic Ocean, and that should help with the instability a little bit with our lapse rates, and overall bring it a little bit higher than what our instability models are currently forecasting. If we take a look at simulated sounding for the region, you can see that our most unstable cape, this isn't really the best sounding. This is a little bit lower than what we are expected to see for our instability in the region of concern, but you can still see that it is forecasting the possibility of severe thunderstorms. You can see very, very good curvature in the low levels of that photograph, so we are expected to see quite a bit of directional shear to support tornadoes. And then we are seeing overall fairly weak most unstable cape, but you can see that we do have significantly higher forecasted cape, probably due to those due to the warm air advection out of the southeast. So we are expected to see that help our instability a little bit. Taking a look at our convective inhibition and how that's going to help build up our instability a little bit, as well as possibly inhibit our storms. You can see as that cold front does move into the southern region of concern and the southern slight risk region across the coastal regions of South Carolina. As I was mentioning, that is probably going to be the best area for severe thunderstorms, as we don't really have a lot of convective inhibition behind the cold front, but you can see that we do have quite a bit of convective inhibition along the or ahead of the cold front. That is going to be helping instability build up a little bit, so it's not going to be able to freely rise in the atmosphere, and it will allow it to it will allow it to build up and explode with great force as that cold front moves into the region. However, you can see that the convective or the cap in place is going to be quite strong, upwards of negative 350. So we are expected to see quite a bit of a cap in place, and it may be a little bit too strong and may inhibit our storms. So we're gonna have to watch out for that and how that's going to affect our storms. But overall, we should still see this help with instability just a little bit, but due to the amount of weak instability that we have, we probably aren't going to get a crazy amount of severe thunderstorm threat from this. But again, with the convective inhibition in place, with how strong it is, it may be inhibiting our storms a little bit. And you can see as that surface low does curl back around that cold front, is going to introduce a ton of convective inhibition behind the cold front, which is probably going to inhibit our storms a little bit as it progresses into North Carolina. So again, our best probabilities for severe thunderstorm is probably going to be back into South Carolina. Taking a look at our instability, you can see that we are expected to have some fairly moderate instability to fairly low end instability ashore, but we do have some fairly good instability back out into the Atlantic Ocean. But what's ashore is fairly good instability. It's not really the best. We are seeing instability that is going to be sufficient for severe thunderstorms and sufficient for the possibility of some strong damaging wind gusts and the possibility of a few tornadoes across this region. Um, and it does look like that warm air advection and the capping in place did help with our instability a little bit, where we are seeing Cape values are going to be getting into the low 1000s in the upper triple digits, possibly getting close to the mid 1000s, but probably going to stay around the low 1000s. So we are definitely expected to see quite a bit of fuel to support the possibility of a few tornadoes across this region. Um, and it does look to be a little bit higher than what I did see previously when I was reviewing the models before I made the video. It does look like we have a little bit more better instability than what I previously thought. So that is that as well. Taking a look at our 700 millibars and our low-level jet and how that is going to affect our directional shear across this region, you can see that we do have a quite strong low-level jet feeding in from the Atlantic Ocean with 700 millibar flow or low-level flow in the low-level jet that is going to be getting into the 70 miles per hour and 60 miles per hour, probably possibly even getting to the 80 miles per hour further out to sea. So we are expected to see a fairly strong low-level jet feed in from the Atlantic Ocean. That should help enhance some of the curvature in the low levels of the hodograph. Taking a look at our storm relative helicity at our 3 kilometers, you can see that we are expected to have a ton of directional shear because of the veering of the wind in our 500 millibar trough, as well as the strengthening or the strength of that low level jet that is going to be giving us a ton of directional shear. Um, upwards of 500 to 600, possibly getting close to 700 meters squared to second squared of storm relative velocity at the or 0 to 3 kilometer, just ahead of the cold front. So we are expected to see a ton of directional shear to support the possibility of a few tornadoes across this region. However, as mentioned previously, with the convective inhibition that we have in place and how strong it is expected to be, and the instability that we do have, which is quite sufficient, the convective inhibition is probably going to be preventing storm development a little bit and inhibiting it. So we aren't really expected to see the storm relative velocity or the directional shear be used up to its full potential because of that capping in place. Taking a look at our energy helicity index models and our possibility for tornadoes across this region, you can see that we do have some fairly good energy elasticity index readings for the coastal regions of South Carolina before we have that capping introduced behind the cold front. You can see energy elasticity index values are going to be ranging anywhere between 1 and 2, probably possibly getting above 2 in some regions, which is going to be indicative of that 5% tornado risk. However, you can see as soon as that low pressure system starts to curl back behind the cold front and introduce a ton of convective inhibition behind the cold front, you can see that we see those energy elasticity index values immediately drop out as it moves into North Carolina. But you see that we may be able to have a little bit of some aid blow in from the Atlantic Ocean that could still support the possibility of a few tornadoes across this region. However, as mentioned previously, we are expected to see a significant decrease in the possibility of tornadoes and the possibility of severe thunderstorms because of that convective inhibition as it moves into North Carolina.